Hello everybody and welcome to this two-part lesson on Songs of Ourselves Volume 1 for CIE IGCSE. What we're going to be doing in part 1 is we're going to look at how to deconstruct, interpret and plan for an essay question, and then in part 2 we will look at how to write an essay response. So let's just recap this part of the paper. You've got about 45 minutes for this section of the exam. Do use your time wisely. Don't forget to read the poem, make notes on the poem, plan your answer, write up your answer, and then just give yourself some time to check. It's going to be much easier for you if you practice your method before you actually sit the exam. And today, as I said, we're going to go through how to approach this question, and then in the next lesson, we'll look at how you write up your answer. So what should you focus on when you're looking at a poem? Now all of these you will cover in your lessons. Your teacher will cover these when teaching you the anthology. But just a reminder, for when you go into your exam, you will be faced with a poem that you do know, but you must remember that you're being expected to comment on a range of different features. So you should be thinking about the content, what the poem is about, the themes, the tone, the message, the big ideas or the issues that are explored by the poet's intention. Think about language, structure and form. You should be talking about all three of those. They should make their way into your answer. And context, but only if it's relevant. So how are you supposed to answer this question? Now all you need to do is just make sure that you know what skills are being assessed and where. So first of all, you've got your AO1 and AO2. So this is evidence that you've got a good understanding of the poem, and that's just what I've mentioned. Do you understand the themes? Do you understand the meaning and the message? Do you know who the speaker is, what their perspective is, what their voice is? Think about the tone and think about the point of view of the poet as well. And yes, sometimes context will help you with the feelings or the point of view of the poet and what they're trying to convey. Use of relevant quotations is very, very important. Making deeper meanings and inferences. So don't be afraid to interpret, but not only interpret a quotation or the meaning, but offer alternative interpretations. So this could mean X, Y, and Z. It could also mean, it could be suggested that. Think about the poet's intention, why they've written this poem, what they want you to understand, how they want you to feel. And again, context only if it's relevant. Please don't bolt on a piece of contextual or historical information. Only use it if it aids and supports what you're already talking about. AO3 is the ability to demonstrate a good understanding of how ideas, themes, a speaker is presented to you. The how is the method, the language, the structure, the form. Within that, you must also show that you know why they have been presented in this way. If free verse has been used as a form, why? How does free verse support the bigger issues? How does free verse support the message? Why has the poet chosen that particular form? And finally, AO4. AO4 is all about how you present your ideas. This is how it will look when you write up your ideas in an essay format. Should be relevant, should be coherent, and it should be clear that you are personally responding to the question. So here is just an overview of some of the different techniques and methods that you could comment on. You may want to pause the video here just to have a quick look. I've got a range of language, structure and form. And when you're thinking about any of these, you're always asking yourself, what is it that I see? Why has it been used? What is the effect? How does this particular device or method reinforce the message? How does it reinforce the themes? And if you can, always try and double up. For example, you may pick a quotation that is personification, but you may also notice that it's also a line that has enjambment. So you may decide to talk about two different techniques within one quotation. Now let's have a look at the question. So the question we're going to be looking at today is, how does Gillian Clarke explore the impact of war on nature in Lament? And don't forget that you will be given a blank copy of the poem in your exam paper. It will be in front of you and you will obviously get a choice of 2 questions. So here are the steps that you should use when you are approaching this particular question. You may already have steps that you follow, or you may have a range of different steps or different methods and you're not sure which one. Regardless of which set of steps that you decide upon, it's always a good idea to have the same steps that you're going to use every time you approach the question. So this is my suggestion with regards to the steps. So step 1 is you read the question and you underline the focus. Step 2 is where you make a note of what the poem is about. Now, obviously, you should, at this point, know exactly what the poem is about. You'll know all of the details that I've already gone through with you with regards to the different assessment objectives and what you're expected to understand. But it's a really good idea to, in effect, you're having a bit of a brain dump at the start of your exam, and you're just throwing everything that you know about the poem onto the page. And the reason that you do that is because you will write down a lot of themes, you might write down some big ideas, and a lot of what you will write down will actually help you when it comes to analysing your poem, making a little bit of extra notes, and then compiling all of these ideas together for a plan. So you want to be thinking about what kind of poem it is. Sometimes that can link to the content. So, for example, if a poet's decided to use a sonnet, why have they done that? Is it because they're talking about love, or is it because they're subverting the idea of love? What are the themes or the issues that are explored? And then that leads you into how they're explored. You can then talk about method. Think about the tone, and especially think about the poet's message and intention. So what their purpose is with this poem, what they're intending for the reader to understand or think or feel. All of that then links back to, well, how do they get you to that point? And the how, again, is your method. So once you've made your notes, you've just got all of those ideas onto the paper, then you go to step 3, which is where you go back through the poem, and then you start to think about quotations, evidence that you can use. And these will be quotations that are relevant to the question, but also your initial ideas, because obviously when you go through step 2, you're thinking about that question, you're thinking about that keyword in the question, and that's probably going to guide you in terms of the things that you write down on the paper. As you're going through the poem and you're thinking about the quotations that you can use, it might be a good idea to go through and just highlight anything that you think might be useful, and then go back through and think, right, okay, I've highlighted a lot here, I can't use them all. I'm going to pick, first of all, the best quotations, the ones that I really understand and can analyse, but also the ones that are really relevant to the question and some of the ideas that I've already started to have. And once you've kind of got a really good idea of the quotations you want to use, you can then start quickly just jotting down what the methods or the techniques are, because obviously we don't just want to name techniques. You're not really going to get any marks for just saying this is a metaphor. But if you start to go through and focus yourself on the methods, then you can think, right, okay, I've said that a metaphor is used in that quotation. Can I now link it back to some of the notes I've got for step 2? How does that metaphor reinforce the big ideas? How does that metaphor reflect the theme, for example? And also it's a good idea at this stage to look out for quotations where you can double up and you can layer. And by that I mean you may have a quotation that's got caesura in there, but it's also got enjambment, and so you've got the double techniques, and then you can layer your analysis. So first of all, the caesura is used for X, Y, and Z. In addition, the use of enjambment takes this idea further by, so you can kind of layer that analysis quite nicely. And then number 4 is where you bring all of that together. You've got a lot of ideas written down, and then it should be quite an easy job of looking at what you've got, looking at your notes, looking back at the question, and then thinking, okay, so now I just need to take all of that and have a 3-point plan, get myself some topic sentences, think about which quotations I'm going to use for each one. Then you've got quite a good plan. As you're writing up your essay from your plan, remember your plan is going to guide you, your plan is going to make sure you're getting those marks at AO4 because it's relevant, it's controlled, it's coherent, but as you're doing that, you go back to your notes, your annotations, and that's where you pull in the analysis that hopefully you've already written down. Okay, so let's have a look at the question. So like I said, you read the question and you underline the focus, and the focus obviously here is the impact of war on nature. Now obviously the how here is your methods. How does she explore it? Well, she explores it through a metaphor, through the idea of, and everything that we say now has to be about nature and the impact that war has on nature. So this bit here is really going to guide you with regards to your initial notes, your annotations, and then your final plan. So the next stage, now we've highlighted that, we really understand, it's given us a really good focus just to keep us organised, keep everything that we're saying relevant. We're now going to go on to number 2, which, like I said before, it's a bit like your brain dump. You throw everything in your head onto the page before you forget it. Exams are very, very stressful, so it's a good idea to get all those ideas out before you get too stressed and before the nerves really start to kick in. And then once you've got them on the paper, you can then start to use them. So this is an example. I've written in mostly full sentences here just to help you understand where I've got all these ideas from, where I'm going with it. But of course, in your exam, you write in note form, make it as quick as possible. Obviously, it has to be easy for you to understand once you go back to it. But this is just a really good idea of how to organise your notes. So I've gone for what's it about, what's the tone, what are the message and big ideas, what are the themes, and what's the form. So if there's nothing in particular you can say about the form, then don't worry about it. But if there is something specific that you can say, then you might want to weave it into some of your paragraphs. Form can be used as evidence. Obviously, if you want to say it's free verse, you might not be able to quote that, but it is something that you can use as evidence, whether you can quote it or not. So I advise you to pause the video now. You can have a quick read of the poem overview just to bring you up to speed on what kind of ideas I've decided to write down there, how it links to the question. Also, it might help you with a little bit of extra understanding of the poem if you felt that you needed that. And then you'll see what I'm going to do with that information as we move forward. So if you just want to pause the video now. Okay, so now we are on to Step 3. So we have our poem overview over here, and also what you will have here is, and it may be a good idea, if you've written notes that are a little bit longer like I have, you could just go through and think, well, okay, I've got all these ideas, everything's just been pouring out of my head, now I'm going to go through and just quickly highlight some of the keywords and ideas, because those keywords and ideas, not only are they going to help you with your topic sentences, your points for each of your sections of your essay, but they can also help you with your analysis. If you've picked a quotation and you're struggling with what to say, you think, oh, I know that a metaphor's been used, but I'm really not sure why. You can go back over here and you can even say, a metaphor's been used to show the impact on nature. Or a metaphor has been used because it shows how nature is mourning the loss, or we are mourning the loss of nature, or we are mourning the impact of nature because of war. So all of these words, these phrases, these key ideas can really help you if you're in a bit of a bind and you're stuck. It just gives you something to push you forward. So what you're going to do now, you've got your key ideas, possibly you've highlighted some of the keywords to make them stand out, and that will help you when you're going back through the poem. And then you want to highlight quotations that are relevant for you. And it may be useful if you've got different coloured pencils or highlighters in your exam, it might be useful to just get those out, do yourself a little bit of a key, and then what you can do is you can go through and you can start to highlight. So we've got what we know. This is what we know about the poem, and now we have to look for how we know, some methods, the techniques. So we've got to look for evidence. So here is an example of one that I've already done. You can see that I have used my different coloured highlighters. I've given myself a little bit of a key. And the reason that I've done that is because I really want to make sure I'm showing the examiner that I can comment on a range of methods. So language, structure and form, they're all part of a literature text, and you want to show that you can talk about them. What you don't want to do is you just talk about language all the way through. Obviously language is an easier one to pick out, it's a bit more obvious, but you do want to try and show that you've got a range. So I can immediately look at it and see, obviously I've got a lot of green, so I know I've got a lot of language, but I also can see that I am touching upon the structure and the form. And also when I come to write up my essay, and I come to put in my evidence, I can think, right, okay, this point I can really evidence this point by talking about the fact that it's a free verse poem, and that really goes with the point that I'm trying to make. So having it quite visual over here can really help you when you're drawing in your evidence to your plan and then your essay. And then what we want to do is we then want to go back through, have a think about which quotations we like, and then we just want to start writing down some of those methods. That should be quite easy. You'll have studied this poem several times in the classroom. You may even have done it for a mock or for an in-class task. So it should just be something that just flows out of your memory. Like, I understand where all of these different techniques are. So you've highlighted your quotations, you name the method, we want to name it. Obviously that's not the most important thing, it's how you explain and analyse it. That's where you're going to get your marks from. So you can see that I've just quickly gone through and I've written down all the different methods, techniques that I can see. Now you've got your techniques, you've got your methods, you have to think about what you might say about them. And again, going back to that poem overview, that brain dump, that's really, really going to help you here. And again, notes. So don't spend a lot of time doing this. Don't overthink it. You really want to just write enough notes down to get your brain going when you're writing your essay, because what you want to do is when you write your essay, you want to set yourself up in a perfect position that you can just go ahead and write. You don't need to keep stopping and thinking because you've got your notes already. Now, obviously, you can see I've done quite a few here, probably got too many, but this is just to show you the different kind of annotations that you can use. So I've decided to just focus on some of the ones that I know in detail, that I can talk about. There's absolutely no point choosing a quotation if you like the look of it and you remember your teacher said something great about it, but you're still not sure and you really don't know what you're going to say, because that will be a point in your exam where you're sitting there and your brain is turning and you can't think of anything, and it's not a very nice feeling, and it doesn't need to be that way. You can just pick ones that you like and that you know you can talk about. So if you spend too long thinking about, oh gosh, what do I say, and move on and try and pick another one. So if you want to just pause the video right now, just have a little bit of a look at some of the pieces of analysis that I've put here, just so you can see. Obviously you don't need to go into as much detail. I just have, for the purpose of this video, to show you how I'm linking the methods back to some of my ideas that I put down in my brain dump, but also how I'm linking it back to the focus of the question. So as you read through, you'll be able to see exactly how I've done that. But again, you don't need as much detail for yourself, just enough detail to help you, but not enough that really you're writing your essay on this page. Okay, so now I'm at the point of where I can now pull all of that together and I can do quite a brief plan, because I've done a lot of the work already, so it doesn't need to be really long. All the plan is now going to do is pull everything together and give me a clear focus for my essay. So now we've got the notes on the poem, the themes, the big ideas. We've got our brief annotation on a range of different quotations and techniques. And then we just need to think, right, okay, what is the main idea being expressed in this poem? Okay, so the question is guided us a little bit, the impact of war on nature, but what really is the message here? What's the main idea? Once you've decided what that is, that then can act as your thesis statement, and your thesis statement, it's your line of argument if your teacher has gone through this with you already. So your thesis statement is, this is what I believe in response to the question, and then you can build your introduction around your thesis statement, and then your thesis statement is a little bit like a thread. It goes all the way through your essay and it pulls everything together. So this is my main idea. Again, I've written it in, it's quite detailed. Yours just needs to be notes. So my main idea here is that war causes widespread and irreversible destruction to both nature and humanity. This highlights the fragility of life and the devastating consequences of human conflict. So that's my main idea, which is it's kind of like an umbrella term, and all of my ideas are going to come off of this umbrella. Okay, so now you've got your main idea. You're now going to think of the points that you can make that answer the question, support your main idea. Remember I said it's a little bit like an umbrella. And then you go back and you find evidence to support them. So our thesis statement is, I'll give you a second to read that again. And then these are the different points that I'm going to make. So war is a force that corrupts even the most life-giving environments. I'm going to make a point around the scale of destruction caused by war, and my final one is going to be about the permanence of war's destruction. So these are my ideas. I will turn them into full topic sentences that can lead each section of my essay. And just remember that you should have covered all of these. So you think, right, what's my point? Then what is my evidence? What does the evidence show? This is where your analysis, your interpretation comes in. How does it show it? So what kind of technique, method has been used? Why does it show it in this way? This is where you link back to the poet's intention, their purpose, their message. So you can really see how we're hitting all of the assessment objectives here. So now we're going to go back, choose the quotations that we're going to use for each point in the plan. I'm going to aim for 2 to 3 quotations per point. So your point, sometimes one point is a paragraph. Everybody always wants to know, how many paragraphs do I need to put in an essay? And that's really difficult to say. You just need to make sure that you've roughly got 3 points, because that means that you've got breadth, you're covering a lot of ideas in the poem, and that you've got multiple quotations per point. What you don't want to have is just 3 peel paragraphs, if that's peel, petal, whichever one you've learned, and you've just got 1 quotation. So you want to show that you can use a range of evidence to support your ideas. So when I go through my example, you'll see that I've used more than 1 quotation to show that I can keep backing my ideas up, rather than just building everything around 1 quotation. And it may be that then means that one point, 1 section is 2 paragraphs, and that's absolutely fine, as long as you are linking those paragraphs together, which again, I can show you how to do. Okay, so then you come to the point of where you really want to bring this plan together. You want to make sure that for each of the points that you're going to mention, we've got these down here, just to remind you, that you've got quotations that can support it, that back it up. So they must be relevant to this point here. And a lot of it will be the analysis that you make around the quotations that shows how it's relevant, that shows how it supports your point. So this is where you take a little bit of time to think about which quotations you're going to use. And like I said, we want 2 to 3 for each point. Now, you will probably already at this stage have a way that you want to plan, and do use whichever planning method you feel comfortable with. But what I would say is, at this point, don't then be making a really detailed additional plan on top of all the notes that you've already got on your poem, on top of all the annotations, because you've done an awful lot of work already. If you've got all of your notes and you've got your quotations, you've got a little bit of annotation to remind you what to say, then you've got a lot of it already. All you now need to do is pull it all together and organise it. And one of the easiest ways to do that, if you've already got the notes, as you can see on the screen here, is then just to decide to number them. So you go through and you think, right, okay, so for my point 1, that we can see war is a force that corrupts even the most life-giving environments, which 2 to 3 quotations do I think really support that? And then you just write your numbers down. So you can see I picked my 3, just so happens they're in the first stanza. It won't always be that way. I'm not just going in chronological order, I'm going with the ones that I think really fit that point. But then it will take me maybe 30 seconds to a minute, maybe a minute if I'm not that sure at this point, but just to quickly go through and write 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. And then I'm just pulling all of the notes that I've already written together. And the good point about this is, most people will try not to plan, and they'll think, oh, I don't want to plan. I've got it in my head. I just want to get writing. And that's always going to be a bit of a mistake, because when you plan, you get your ideas ready in your head, and you really like taking out the ability for you to maybe forget things and then have to put little asterisks and say to the examiner, oh, really, really sorry, I forgot this piece of analysis, it's here at the end. So if you do spend a little bit of extra time going through, making your notes, putting a plan together, then once you've done this, look at all of these notes I've got, I'm in a perfect position now to start writing my essay. I keep looking back at this, and I can even just start to cross things out. So if I've covered this, I will cross it out, highlighter it out, put a big red pen through it, think, all right, I've covered that. What's next? What's next? And it just helps you to be a bit more organised. It helps you with the coherence of your essay, but also it just makes sure that you're not going to forget anything, because you've already said, yes, I want to talk about sibilants. Haven't done that yet. Let me just make sure I've got that in before I move off to the next point. Okay, and this is what my final plan would look like. Now, obviously, I'm not telling you to write a plan this detailed. This would all be on the poem. But just so you can see how I've pulled everything together, like I haven't added anything here that's not on the poem. So all of these I've just copied and pasted into this planning table. If it helps you to do some kind of planning table, that's absolutely fine. I would keep it very, very brief. But if you can do your plan on the poem itself, then that will save you time. So you can see that for each of the points that I've got now, I've got my evidence, my quotation. See, look, I've even got free verse in here as a piece of evidence. And then I've got my notes over here on what I want to say about each one. These notes I have just copied and pasted from the previous slide, so I haven't written anything else separately. I haven't wasted time just recopying things down. I'm using what I've already got. And as I was just pulling it together, I've checked that I have got my point over here, I've got my evidence in the middle, I've got my comments here and about what the evidence shows, the methods, how it shows it, and then I'll pull it all together when I write up my my actual essay. And you can see that I put myself in a fantastic position, done a lot of the thinking already. Now I just need to think about how to put it all together. It means that when I'm writing my essay, I don't have to be thinking about, okay, I put a quotation in, what do I now say about it? Because that's quite stressful. Okay, so thank you for taking part in this lesson. I hope it's helped you to understand how to get to the point of where you've got a really, really good plan. Please do check out part 2, which is where we look at how to write up your answer. Thank you very much. Goodbye.